we already introduced David Greer, who is the Acting Deputy Commissioner of Academics. Did I get it right?
That's
Good. Tanya Breland, who is the Director of Professional Development within the same division. Beverly Kling, who is the Director of, or will be shortly, the Director of Standards at the department. And we're waiting for, is Michael here? Michael Cohen was supposed to be here.
Yeah, I did too.
Michael Cohen was supposed to be here from NJEA, but we've had a lot of conversations with NJEA about this process as we have with superintendents and school boards. Janet Shiraka, who is the Director of Curriculum Instruction with North Brunswick School District, and she also represents us, NJPSA, on the State Professional Learning Committee at the state level. So, and then Don McInerney, who's our CEO at the foundation. Okay. So I'm just going to open it up with one broad question, and maybe we can take it from there. But from each of your perspectives, what do you see is the power of having a common framework?
I'm happy to jump in. We've been using the CAR framework. We started with one elementary school, and now we've expanded it to 3 other elementary schools, all our elementaries and our preschool. And having that common framework drive our instruction and curriculum work, it helps set a district-wide understanding and common language. And whenever we have questions, we just refer back to the framework. It's just, we have it in our website for professional learning. The CAR framework drives the work that we do. And when there's a question about culture, something else going on, we refer back to the framework. And so that's sort of like the centerpiece of how we do our work.
So I'll be happy to talk next. Coming from the Office of Standards, I think it's going to be incredibly useful for us because it's going to focus our conversations. So we have a different content coordinator. We will be fully staffed next week. We're so excited about that. And so that we can maintain the same types of conversations with the field, having common understandings, having common language, and having a common purpose will help us to be a more focused unit as we speak not only to educators in the field, but we share this information around the various departments within the NJDOE.
And I would echo the same as both Janet and Beverly. I do see an opportunity for common language around teaching and learning, common language around building formative and summative assessments, a common language around just the collaborative process that teachers are engaged in, and an opportunity to put the teachers back in the driver's seat. I think that this is a great opportunity with this framework.
Yeah, I agree. I think time is really excellent to be having these conversations as we look to move from reform to refocus. And I like the piece about that as we as the department are reorging, looking at some of these pieces within the structure of the Department of Education, we're able to use this common language. And you'll see anyone who knows me as a world language person, how I feel about that phrase. Let's all use the same language. And like, let's use multiple languages, but it is that focus there on language of being able to work together as we refocus.
Yeah, shared language, shared understanding, shared vision is so essential. And what we see through the CAR conversations is a shift. When teams of teachers come together, the shift moves from me focused on my kids to all of us focused on our kids. So a 3rd grade team of teachers comes together and they really do begin to think about our kids across the 3rd grade level. Pat and Linda both talked about equity, and Linda mentioned that image we've seen about equity with the kids on the boxes and the difference between equality and equity. But oftentimes there's a 3rd vision, a 3rd frame in that equity image, and that's where the wooden fence is replaced by a see-through fence. And to me, the CAR framework does that 3rd vision, that 3rd image, in which we take the barrier and we reconstruct it so it makes curriculum instruction and assessment more accessible for all kids.
One of the things that excites me about this is the communication offices and all the offices in the department. But with the department sharing this vision, then when things come from the department, hopefully it will be about, for example, we've dealt with the climate surveys or bullying or tiered systems of support. They can't be separate things, but seen as a way to strengthen, for example, with the anti-bullying climate for learning, seen as a way to use your formative and summative assessments to create a universally sound curriculum and then the appropriate interventions. Because we have been in schools where people say, yeah, I want to institute tiered systems of support, like it's a new program. But it's not, it's a practice, right? And so being able to have those conversations once a basic vision is set, I think can be extremely powerful. For the department panelists, how have you thought ahead beyond, and I know it's been very hectic for you, but have you thought ahead beyond what happens in this year, unpacking, next year, giving these units to schools? How will you continue to communicate the vision, use the vision, communicate it consistently, and then support with the implementation?
So I'll be happy to begin on that. First off, I just wanted to say that I'm looking around to see if there's anybody else in this room that taught long before standard. I certainly did, and you might remember those days, right? So great teachers, which obviously you were doing amazing things. But when we talk about equity, we want to ensure that all teachers have those opportunities. And then second, every once in a while, I think Pat and I just kind of have that little smile together because I was there 10 years ago when this was all starting. And I think that should help to make you all feel good that there was somebody in place in this position now that knows how important that collaborative is. And this week, we're having conversations with the collaborative, with this organization, and tomorrow Dave and I are going to be talking with the Superintendent's Association. So when we talk about communication, it is about having that shared voice. And also, if you didn't see it already, Dave, Tanya, and I are not only collaborators in terms of the work that we do, but we really like each other. And we've known each other for many years and have worked together. And we already have that common and shared vision that at the core is our practitioners. And we are so excited that the shift in focus at the department is now on the practitioners. And so when we think about communication, I've created, with the support of Tanya and Dave, 2 one-pagers, one is 2 pages long and one is 4 pages long to capture the vision, the communication strategies, how we're going to build capacity, how we're going to leverage our partnerships, not only the ones that are sitting here, but the other various New Jersey agencies, museums, the higher ed, the teacher prep programs, all of the people, the public, all of the people that are involved in supporting our students. And then critically important, while it is the last step on the phases, I think it's the continuous step, which is the review and the refinement. And there are a few of you that I've had conversations with in the past, and you know how important it is to me to bring everyone to the table. So I am the social studies coordinator, so you know that diverse perspectives is critically important to me. So I hope that you'll take time, either today or follow up with us, either any one of us, to share your ideas about how we can continue to communicate this critically important message of the shared vision with our constituents.
Well said. And we have a couple of people here that sit on the State Professional Learning Committee. Tanya is now is leading that committee, the liaison to the department, and Janet sits as your representative on that. How do you see that group playing a role in this?
Well, the State Professional Learning Committee is a stakeholders group that is written into code, and we advise the commissioner. We also support the work of the department. And I've served on that committee since its inception in 2014 and co-chaired the committee as well. And so there's an opportunity, because the stakeholders are represented from all across the state. So we have teachers that are represented there, we have administrators, and we have higher ed. And so, and we also have community/parent representation. So we have everyone at the table, and the committee long endorsed the CAR framework, right from the time, pretty much in the first year that the committee convened. We were learning about the CAR framework, we were weighing in and giving feedback on the blended online learning modules that were accompanied with the framework as well. And we have been very supportive of it, and many of the individuals who serve on that committee have not only been able to talk about it in their districts, but some have also implemented in their districts. So I think that the committee continues to be a great opportunity and avenue to support this work.
Right, and I also see it as a real refocus for our committee to really say, how can we support the work of bringing together all the departments under the framework? And so we can be a touch point for the department saying, kind of feedback on how are these pieces connecting together.
And Donna, can you tell us a little bit about, Tanya mentioned some of the districts that have implemented this and that we have actually studied in terms of gathering research on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the last, for the last 3 years, we have been working with 26 schools through a grant-funded program, and the schools are all implementing the Connected Action Roadmap. We're evaluating it through the Stockton University, and we've learned a tremendous amount from these pilots. Over, I think there's 11 or 12 districts total. Some of the lessons we've learned are how critical leadership is, both at the building level, central office level, and the teacher leadership level as well. We've seen an improvement in climate and culture coming through the pilots. A number of schools began to report earlier than we expected improvements in student achievement. We didn't plan to even look at student achievement until schools were about 3 years into it, so we were pleasantly surprised by that information. But one of the most powerful pieces coming out of it is the improvement of teacher practice and the empowerment that teachers feel. I've had a number of teachers say to me how before they were implementing programs, some scripted, some not, that was the real focus. Textbooks were driving curriculum, and they really have taken back ownership of their practice, collaborating together to have those conversations about what instructional strategies and resources are best for the kids in front of us, because those are the people who need to have those conversations. And that common language isn't just something that's abstract. They really begin to develop this shared responsibility, common language, common understanding about what's best for kids. For the last 3 years, we've focused on these pilots, and we've had expansion within the districts that are currently in the pilot. In year 4, we are going to be looking to invite new districts and new schools within districts to participate in the CAR pilot. So I hope you'll keep that in the back of your mind and consider bringing some of your schools into this. Many of the schools currently in the pilot started as one school, and several quickly expanded to include schools from across their district. Janet's North Brunswick district was one of those. I think one of the most interesting things we found is that when we have a lack of leadership support, it's difficult for this to continue. And in year 1, we started off with 31 schools, and at the end of year 1, 4 of those schools pulled out of the pilot because, for a variety of reasons. In year 3, they came back into the pilot because what they told me was they realized how central it was to the work of teachers and leaders. So I think that's one of the biggest endorsements, that when they stepped away from the pilot, they realized how critical it was to their work. But we have some, Janet's been in the pilot, Tanya's been a coach within the pilot, so can I open it up to them to share?
The pilot's been very supportive of our teachers and building that shared leadership. And I think one of the big things that we've learned is that it's all local, that every school is different and every district is different. So as we implement this across the state, it's not a one-size-fits-all, it's a framework, and within the framework, you have to make it work for your district. So we have certain schools that were at different places when we started last year. So one school had already done the pilot for a year, and another school, 2 other schools changed leadership. I left one school, and then we had new principals come on board. There were some culture issues, so the pieces on culture were the places that those schools needed to start. They couldn't get into the PLC work until they understood where they were as a school and had a common shared vision for teaching and learning, which CAR helped them determine, and they did that locally. So each school was at a different place, and I think that's something we always have to recognize, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think that's one of our big lessons. I think that the shared leadership piece is just so powerful. It really helps empower teachers, and the leaders involved also see that you can't do everything on your own. There's too much in a school to support student learning to try and do it by yourself. So building that capacity of the teachers to be part of the conversation about where the school's going towards student learning is essential, and making sure that everybody is involved systematically across the district. We now have, and it varies by district size, I think, too. So we have multiple PLCs operating at different levels. We have the school ones, we have district level ones, and I think that's important that it goes across the whole system of the school and the district, not just, it needs to start with the school board and the superintendent understanding how this is the vision for teaching and learning, and that it's threaded throughout all the different levels of the community.
I'm absolutely thrilled that you said this is not one size fits all. That goes back to our overwhelming urge to outsource our professional practice and get programs. So I just want to say again, this is not a program. It's not a step-by-step, this is what you do. It is a vision for how these components fit together. And then there's certainly support, there will be support for implementing that and having conversations. But for me, in the first year for schools, as they know that these units are coming, it's right, what is this vision? Do we embrace this vision? How will we consider using these new units that are going to be developed? Those kinds of conversations are important because it is different in every single school district. No one is trying to prescribe one thing. So again, I keep reiterating that because I don't want people to walk away saying, oh, now we're all going to do more.
I had the opportunity to work with one district, but 2 schools in that district, as well as do some training in other districts who were implementing or looking to launch CAR in their districts. And I found a number of things. PLCs were a bad word.
Yes.
And so, the teachers had a lot of apprehension about, PLCs, because if you remember, mid-2000s, around about 2005, 6, 7, there was a big wave of professional learning communities. Everybody's doing professional learning communities. And so it got a bad name because no one was implementing them effectively. And so we really had to kind of shift the thinking around professional learning communities. It's really not about the name professional learning communities. It's about the work that's actually happening in those teams. And so I think the teachers began to feel more empowered as they, what I referenced earlier, took the driver's seat. And taking the driver's seat in creating high quality curriculum and being able to, and as well as formative and summative assessments, but being able to look at the work that was going on in their buildings. And there was one teacher that framed it this way: this is making our job so much easier. Because CAR really isn't new, it's just a way to bring together all of those pieces that we do already in schools and to bring it together very cohesively. And so when the teams would gather together and they finally got to the place where they understood, what is that work that is supposed to be happening? What are the conversations that we should be having in our professional learning communities? That is the point in time that the work started to move forward. But just like Janet mentioned, climate and culture was a big challenge for a lot of the schools. And that was something they realized once they did their pre-assessment or their self-assessment and really started to reflect on where they were as a school. They realized we really can't move this work forward until we learn how to work together and truly collaborate around student learning, with student learning being at the center of the work that they're doing. And really refocusing them and helping them to move away from, this is where we talk about our field trips, and this is where we talk about, you know, how Johnny got in trouble today, but we're using this as an opportunity to really focus our attention on what matters most, on the why, you know, and that why being student learning. So it's been a process, and even helping leaders to understand how they can support their teams of teachers as they're collaborating together, and helping leaders even to kind of take their hands off of it and take the controls, you know, away from themselves so much as sharing that with the teachers. That really was a big learning curve for some of the schools as well. And I see that the ones who have, you know, started moving forward collaboratively, they're moving forward. And as Pat referenced, some of that student achievement data has already started to indicate that. So it's been a work in progress, but I think it's been a positive work, moving in the right direction.
I think that's really important, that CAR is a journey. Because it's a process and not a program, this is not like an overnight thing. You know, I get these units and then I get these PLCs and everybody's doing this great thing. It's a process to get there that includes all those pieces of the map. And in process, we've discovered a lot. And the idea of partnerships has been extremely helpful. The whole thing with collaboration with the department. I'll just give you one example. We have Hamilton School District. The whole entire district is engaged in this process. And they have been doing, here's the hard part. We know that it's been very hard, even though it's been great professional learning, for the teachers to unpack the standards and originally get these units, that's being taken off our plate now from the department. But their job then is to build those units out and to constantly revise them based on student data. And so that's very different than what QSAC monitors. QSAC monitors a product, not a process. So we started to have these conversations at the department, and we're working with Hamilton and with the department and with county offices on how will they then look at this process. Because, you know, one of the examples we have is, and you're all familiar with the QSAC monitor, right? Is that you have to put in there, you know, what are you doing for reshape, what are you doing for gifted and talented, what are you doing for ELO, what are you doing for 504, what are you doing for special ed? We don't even know who the kids are yet, but that's what we're doing. So I think, you know, a lot of people, and I'm just being frank, are filling that out because they have to. So again, this is a shift from compliance to practice, because those ideas about what am I doing for the ELL students in my class, those ideas about what am I doing for this particular 504 student with this particular need, what am I doing for these special education students with these particular needs, comes from your work through the unit, right? You're teaching it, you're assessing, you're getting, and then you're making your modifications there. You don't have them all spelled out from day one. If you do, I doubt anybody's using a whole lot of it, right? So let's be real about the process that we use in schools and what needs to happen, and allow us to shift process so that it affects practice positively. So I really appreciate all of you being here today and collaborating with us on this important work. And what we'd like to do now is you have actual questions at your table. We do want to hear some feedback about what you heard this morning. So we've outlined 3 questions. Jeff, are they out?
They're in the packet.
They're in the packet, sorry. Some staff from NJPSA and FDA will come around and be note takers. But we really like to capture your initial thoughts on this whole vision piece. It's really important for us in terms of feedback. So if you can have that discussion, here's the good news. It's 10:30. We'd like you to have that discussion until 10:45, and then have a break till 11. So if you would like to get your coffee first and then have the discussion, it's okay, right? So thank you for before you begin thank you, because this feedback, as I said, is very important to all